Hello.
No.
Nice to meet you.
Joel.
Brandon.
Brandon, g'day.
Jessica.
Jessica, very nice to meet you. My wife's name is Jessica. Hello. Fran, g'day, Fran. Cooper, very nice to meet you. Thank you for having me in your beautiful studio. In the hot seat.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for joining us in the AbiliTV studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
As we're all hosts and reporters, we thought it would be cool to ask you some questions to learn more about how you became the correspondent of Channel 9 Nightly News. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
How old were you when you first started working on TV?
I started working in television in 2009. So you might have to help me with my maths, but I was born in 1983. So that's putting me somewhere around 26. Is that right? I think so. Yeah. So around my mid-20s.
Did you always want to work as a news presenter?
Not necessarily. When I left school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. So I spent quite a few years overseas, traveling and working a little bit. And then I decided that I might like to go back to university. And I lived quite close to a university campus, and I researched the degrees that they had available. And I'd always loved words and writing and public speaking. And so journalism appealed as something that might be a career path. So I went into university, and that's how I got my start. So I never always wanted to be a journalist, but once I discovered that that was an option, it quickly became a passion.
Have you had any other jobs?
Well, I've had lots of jobs, lots of part-time jobs. I worked in a furniture store. I worked in a sports store. I worked in some restaurants. I worked in pubs during university. But then after I finished my degree, I worked in radio. That was my first job in media, initially doing some producing work. So I worked on a sport program that ran from about 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. in Adelaide. And I helped take the phone calls. I helped set up interviews and guests. I would talk to the people before they spoke to the host of the show. And I also did a bit of news work. So I would work in the newsroom for the radio station, and we would write and collate bulletins every half hour on the hour. And then I would voice some of those bulletins, the little news hits that you hear during some radio programs. And those were the jobs I had before I eventually made my way to television.
What does it feel like to fill the shoes of Andrew Lofthouse?
Daunting is one word. Andrew Lofthouse have been in the job for 17 years, so it's a very long time. When I started work at Channel 9 here in Brisbane, Lofty was the newsreader, so I'd known him for a long time, and he was always very generous and kind to me. He helped me create, stories. He helped me develop my writing skills, my presenting skills. And then when he eventually left the job and they asked me to take over the role, he very kindly sent me some emails, and then we had some phone conversations because I said, I don't know how to do this job. I need your help. And he was, again, very generous in his advice that he offered to me. And he continues to, every now and again, he'll send me a text message or an email just to tell me, things I could work on or things that I'm doing well. So I really appreciate having him as an ongoing mentor, given that he was in the job for so long and did such an incredible job.
That's very, very cool.
It is.
What's your favorite part about reporting?
Well, I loved being on the road as a reporter. I did that for most of my career. And the reason that I love the job so much is because of the variety. Every day I would go to work. Most days I didn't know what story that I'd be covering. So you might turn up to work and you could be, doing a politics story, maybe a sports story, or an exciting colour story. So there was always variety, which made it hard to get bored. And I've always loved talking to people. So one of the great perks of this job is you get out and about and you talk to so many people in all different parts of the state, the country, and even all around the world. And now that I'm a newsreader, I spend more time in the office. And one of the things that I love about that is it's the trust that people have in turning on the news, and it's your job to tell them the really important things that are happening in this city and the country and again the world. So it's an honor and it's a big privilege to take on that role. And it's exciting, as you guys would know, when the red light goes on and the cameras roll, it's an adrenaline buzz that you can only get by doing television television or live TV in particular. So I still get that buzz, and it's an exciting thing to do every night, to sit on that desk and hear the countdown and the intro rolls and the blood starts pumping. So it's an exciting job too.
What made you want to do the nightly news?
Well, when I first worked in television, I actually had a friend who was working for Channel 9 in Adelaide, and she got me some work experience. So I went in for a few days of unpaid work and got to experience what it meant to be a journalist on the road. And again, I just loved the variety, and you're traveling all around the city and the state, talking to people, meeting people, and sharing stories. And one of the things about being a journalist is it's a language-based job. You get to use words and use those words to convey other people's stories. And I just love telling stories. So that's why I loved the on-the-road part of it. And then why did I want to be a newsreader? That's an interesting question. I never really thought I would be a newsreader. But then when I answered the phone, I was living overseas. I was in London at the time, and I answered a phone call and said, would I be interested in doing a newsreader job? And I had to think about it, and I thought, I'm not sure, but I thought about it for a while. I thought it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So I thought I'd have a go, and now I really love the job.
What is your favorite story you have covered?
Ooh, that is a question that I get asked a lot, and I don't always have an answer, because sometimes the most exciting stories to cover, the most challenging stories to cover, can be really difficult time for people involved with the story. So sometimes natural disasters, things like cyclones or floods or fires, or I've also spent some time overseas in parts of the world that have conflicts going on. So that can be scary and dangerous for a lot of people, but sometimes they are the most challenging and rewarding stories to tell and to be a part of. But I also love doing what we call color stories. They're, the exciting, happy stories that you might be involved in. So big events or big sporting events. I've been to some Olympics. I've been to Commonwealth Games, major events all around the world where everyone's happy and having a great time. That's often a good story to cover as well.
Did you try out for Channel 9 or did they approach you?
So the initial job that I took at Channel 9, as I mentioned before, I had a friend who was working as a reporter, and at the time I was working in radio, and I thought I should widen my skill set, branch out and see what other forms of media there could be to test my journalism skills. And she was able to get me some work experience at Channel 9 Adelaide. So I went in for a week, and I really fell in love with the job, and I enjoyed the TV side of journalism. And then I kept in touch with the boss. And then a few months later, he gave me a call and he said, I've got an opening, I've got a position. Would you like to come and take the job? And I said, yes, please. And so I started as a junior reporter at Channel 9. So there wasn't so much an interview, but the work experience was like an ongoing interview. You get a chance to see what people do, maybe have a go. We were out on the road and I was able to do some practice stories, come back to the newsroom and try my hand at writing a television news script. And then I took all of that and I showed the boss and said, this is what I can do if ever you have any jobs available. And then fortunately, he gave me a call a few months later, and that's what set me on my path of TV journalism.
Okay, so I heard that you have worked with our executive producer, Aaron. So how did that come about?
Well, yes, Aaron and I worked together at 5AA radio station in Adelaide. So he was at the time working in the newsroom. So he was responsible for writing all the scripts for the news bulletins for every half hour and hour. And then he'd go into the audio booth and he would record. He wouldn't record. He'd do those bulletins live, which is a very scary thing to do. So I'd never done it before. So I watched Aaron do it to try to get a hang of it. He's got a great voice. He's a great radio man. And then I slowly worked my way into the newsroom of the radio station and tried to copy what he was doing and emulate him. And then that was how I worked my way into the newsroom of a radio station. So I just copied Aaron, basically. That's how that was my radio MO.
Basically gave you the job.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about going back to radio?
Well, no, I haven't. I've been fortunate to do a little bit of fill-in stuff here and there, but TV has been so great to me. And ever since I started, my career path has sort of taken me from Adelaide. Then I moved to Brisbane in 2011. And then I went to Canberra in Parliament House, working for Channel 9 in the bureau there. Then came back to Brisbane, and then I spent a couple of years overseas for my wife's job. So I've always been moving here, there, and everywhere, and always had a new challenge in television. And now I'm in this new role, which I've been doing for over 6 months now. So I'm not sure I'll find my way back to radio anytime soon, but you should never say never in this industry. If an opportunity presents or something looks like it might be an exciting job to take on. So not for right now, but you never know. I might find my way back there.
Very true. Hey, Joel. I would like to know, how long since you've been an interviewee?
How long since I have been an interviewee? Well, when I started this job as the newsreader for Channel 9, after I moved back from overseas, we had to do lots of media interviews to explain who I was, why I was doing the role, why I'd been picked for the role, why I wanted to do the job. So we did lots of radio interviews. I did some interviews on the Today Show, which is the breakfast program on Channel 9. I did some newspaper interviews. I got asked lots of great questions, and I was able to explain to people why I think I might be okay at the job and why I wanted to do the job. So that was an interesting thing, because I think the point you're getting at is a good one. I've spent so many years interviewing people. Sometimes when I get on this side, it's a bit strange. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, now, from what I've heard, you started in the radio with TV. Can you tell me a little bit about that journey?
Well, yes. As I said, I started in radio, I think probably around 2007 or 2008, somewhere around there. Actually, when I was finishing my university degree, I did some more work experience while I was still studying in the radio station. And that's how I got my way in through the door there. Then I worked in radio for a few years, just on a casual basis and a part-time basis before I started at Channel 9 in Adelaide in 2009. I did 2 years there, and then I moved to Queensland for Channel 9 in 2011.
That sounds pretty much like a journey it is. And also, here's one question I would like to say. How does it feel to be on AbiliTV?
It feels great. I looked at some of your clips on YouTube that Aaron sent me before, and I thought, this is an incredibly impressive operation, and you guys are doing such a great job. And so I'm proud to be on AbiliTV, and I'm pleased that so far you've been gentle with me.
That's pretty cool, man.
How did you and your wife meet?
Well, it's a classic office romance, Fran. There's a bit of conjecture about how we exactly met, because I don't remember meeting her for the first time. So I was already working at Channel 9 in 2012, and my wife, Jess, got a job as a producer. She also had a very long, winding journalism career. She studied on the Gold Coast, and then her first job was Rockhampton at Win TV, and then she moved up to Cairns, and then down to the Sunshine Coast, worked for Win on the Sunshine Coast, and then she got a job with Channel 9 in Brisbane. And apparently she was a producer. She helped me with a story, but I don't remember it. You should always remember the first time you meet your wife or husband or prospective partner, but I don't exactly remember the moment. But we slowly got to know each other in the newsroom, and then we slowly got to know each other outside of the newsroom, and then eventually wound up married, living together with a kid.
Have you made any accomplishments of your life?
Well, marrying my wife is a good accomplishment. That is a thing that I'm very pleased I was able to accomplish. And we have managed to buy a house together. We got a dog. That was our first major life choice together in about 2014. And then in 2020, we were lucky enough to be blessed with a little boy. So Sullivan is our son, who's now 5 years old. And he's a very talkative chap. Sometimes people say, gee, he talks a lot. And then they say, well, he does have 2 journalists for parents, so it's not much of a surprise. Sometimes we wish he would talk a little bit less, but that's okay. He's very chatty. And now he started at school, and we've dragged him all over the world, and he keeps just doing it, taking it all in his stride. And so I'm not sure whether he's going to be a journalist, but he certainly can talk like a journalist. So it might be a career path he follows.
How did you gain the confidence to be on camera?
That's a good question. It's something that you just need to keep practicing. I don't think anyone, the first time they stand in front of a camera, whether it's pre-recorded or whether it's live, anyone that tells you they were comfortable from the start is probably telling you a fib. It's like any skill. You just need to keep practicing and practicing. And the more time you spend in front of the camera, the more comfortable you will find yourself. And a great bit of advice that I was told and I share with people is you try not to think of it as a camera. You just try to think of it as someone that you're talking to. So down the lens is just a group of friends or your parents or brothers or sisters, and you're just chatting to them. And it's sometimes a bit hard because it is, with all the lights, it's a bit of a strange environment. But if you can just remember it as a person that you're talking to, not a bit of equipment, that helps bring me into a state of comfort where I'm just at ease and can just chat away like I'm normally at home or at a restaurant or something like that.
What's different between reporting out in public and reading the news in the studio?
There's a lot more lights in the studio. There's usually less people. Sometimes when you're out in public, you might be in a city street or at a big event. You got lots of people who are watching you, and that can be a bit nerve-wracking and a bit challenging at times. You don't know what they might do. And in a studio, you don't have as many people, but you do have lots of bright lights, and that can be a bit of an unusual foreign setting, and that can make it a bit more nerve-wracking for a different reason. But the same principle applies. You just got to think of that camera lens as a friend to try to make it as conversational and as natural as you can. And if you're comfortable, then that comes across in your delivery. And people at home don't want you sitting there all stiff and like you're reading an auto cue, like you're a robot. They just want to pretend like they're in the lounge room or you're in the lounge room chatting to them, delivering the news. So you just got to find what makes you comfortable. And that's the key to being ease, and that will come across in your delivery.
Do you have any advice for people wanting to be reporters or correspondents?
My advice is you've got to love telling stories. Sometimes people think they just want to be on TV or they want to be a known person, but that's not a great starting point. You have to love telling stories. You have to love writing stories. You have to have a love of the language. And then that is the principle. And if you get good at telling the stories and you enjoy doing it, and then if you find yourself on TV, you can convey that love of telling stories. And that's what makes a good reporter. At the base of it, it's just you're a journalist. You love asking questions, finding out information, finding out the truth to a story, and then delivering that story. That might be writing it in the newspaper. It might be telling it on the radio or talking to a TV camera. But you got to have an inquisitive mind, be curious about the world, and love telling stories.
You hosted the Today Show over Christmas in Carlswell. Should he be worried about his job at all?
I don't think so. No, I enjoyed doing that job, but it's a very early start. You have to get up at about 3 a.m. in the morning to get in to do the hair and the makeup. It's a different challenge, though. I did really like it. The news program that I present at 6 p.m. goes for 1 hour. And so that's not that long a time. The Today Show is 3.5 hours. So it's a long time to be sitting there doing live TV. It's something I enjoy doing, but I don't think Carl has anything to worry about.
So you were talking about your wife being in the industry, and now she went to Rockhampton first. What was she doing there?
So she was a journalist. She started at Win TV in Rockhampton. So I think a great place for a lot of aspiring journalists to start is in the regions, in the country somewhere, because there's so many great stories in those parts of Queensland and all around Australia. And because the cities aren't as big, you get to know a lot of people. So when you know a lot of people, and then you get to know their stories, you get to find out all those stories and break stories, which is a really great thing to do as a journalist, is be the first person to find out a bit of information and then make a news story out of it. And so she enjoyed being in Rockhampton. There's lots of great things to do in that part of central Queensland. But she wasn't there too long before she kept moving to bigger cities each time. So Cairns, then to Sunshine Coast, and then to Brisbane. So she's had, as I said, a winding path in her journalism career, but that's what makes jobs fun, is you keep moving and keep taking on new challenges.
Excellent. So do you remember any of the little stories of watching your wife at work?
Yeah, well, I can remember all her little milestones. I remember when she first did her story on air for Brisbane at Channel 9. And then I can remember she took on the job as the Queensland reporter for the Today Show. And I can remember some of her incredible work at major events, as I said, floods and fires and cyclones. And then I can remember some of her more quirky stories, some of which, if you look it up on YouTube, I think she did a story about a man who, I think someone crashed a car into a building that he was near, and he came running out in his underwear. And he told this story, and he was had a very interesting turn of phrase. He was a fascinating character, and he told this story about chasing a man down the street in his undies, and it was so funny that they put the clip up online, and I think last count it's got about 2.5 million hits, which is more than anything I've ever done. Serious journalism or big stories, major world events, and a story about a man in his undies by my wife has got way more clicks online. So I got to try to beat that one day.
So where else do you hope to go in your career? What's your ambitions for the future?
That's a great question. Well, I've just started this job. So for now, my ambition is to try to get as good at it as I can. It's always a learning path. You got to keep trying to get better at the craft that you do. Doesn't matter what job you have. So I'm happy where I am for now, and I hope to do it for a lot of years to come. We have lots of amazing events coming up in Queensland over the next decade or so. Of course, the big one is the Olympics and Paralympics in 2032. So I'm hoping that I'm still doing the job in about 8 years' time, because 6 years' time. See, my maths is not good. That's why I'm a journalist. I'm better with words. In 6 years' time, I hope to still be doing the job, because I think it's going to be an incredible experience to be hosting the Channel 9 news during the Olympics, because Channel 9 has the right. So we'll be broadcasting all the Olympics on Channel 9. So I'm really excited about that opportunity. And then after that, we'll see where the world takes me or the job takes me. But for right now, I've just started. So I need to get as good at the job as I can. So if you've got any tips for me, please pass them on.
Hey, Joel again. Do you have any crazy or funny stories from working within the news?
Lots of crazy stories. You meet all sorts of interesting people. But I think probably one of the most unusual experiences was I went to Tokyo for the Olympics. And you can remember that was during the COVID period. So the Olympics was supposed to be in 2020. They postponed it for 1 year. And so the Olympics in Tokyo is in 2021. But it was still a very strange experience, because you're in an odd bubble and you had to check in to a health check every day. I was only allowed to eat in one restaurant for 2 weeks and not talk to anyone. So it was an unusual travel experience. And then I've been to some fascinating parts of the world. Back in 2014, I went to Afghanistan, where there was a pretty big conflict that was going on. So that was both a bit nerve-wracking, but also a fascinating experience to go to those parts of the world and share some really interesting stories.
Oh, yeah. And what was the experience like working in the UK as a foreign correspondent?
Well, primarily my job in the UK was to be a stay-at-home dad, because we went to the UK for my wife's job. She was very fortunate and very well deserving of getting the job as Europe correspondent for Channel 9. So that meant she was living in London, and she covered any news story that happened all throughout Europe or the Middle East. So she did big stories, like she went to Israel a few times. When the last Pope unfortunately died, which is a big event in Rome, she spent weeks and weeks in Rome, both for the funeral of the Pope and also during conclave, which is the process where they pick a new Pope, which is a strange and fascinating phenomenon that happens in the Catholic Church. She went to Paris when do you remember the Louvre, the museum that got broken into?
Yeah.
She covered that story. She went all over the place. And all during those interesting stories, most of my time was spent back in London looking after our son. But while I was there, I did have the opportunity to work for Channel 7 at the time, doing some correspondent work. So I loved being in London. It was amazing, an amazing city to explore and also to work. And I was fortunate to do a little bit of travel through Europe for work also. But my main job during my time in London was a stay-at-home dad. And that's a really good job too. I like that job.
Yeah, I think that's a very good job.
It's hard. Sometimes harder than the paid work, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Not already.
Where did you get your incredible fashion sense?
My incredible fashion sense. Well, I can't lay claim to that, Fran, because fortunately there are very clever and talented people who pick the clothes that I wear. So most of the time I come into work and there's clothes that I just put on. The only thing I do have to choose most days is which tie to wear. And usually I don't have to do too much thinking, because Melissa Downs, who is my co-host, my co-anchor, she normally picks a beautiful dress that she's going to wear. So then I just try to match that. And sometimes I pick a tie and I go into the wardrobe makeup area, and the staff there say, "No good, try again, do a better job." So I appreciate your compliment, but I can't lay claim to too much of that fashion sense. Mostly, I just wear what I'm told to wear.
So you were talking about how you were doing natural disasters. Which are one of the main stories that you can think about?
Probably the one that comes to mind first of all is Cyclone Marsha, which was in 2015, which was a Category 5 cyclone that crossed the coast not far from Rockhampton. And I had never been in a Category 5 cyclone before, which is the highest ranking for a cyclone and the scariest. And so it's one of those things that you'd like to experience once, and then when you've been in one, you think, not again. But it was both scary and challenging, but also rewarding because we were in Rockhampton for several weeks after that because it did quite a lot of damage. So often when people experience hardships, like when a cyclone goes through their town, they might have a lot of damage to their property. You get to experience the resilient nature of people. And so people can be so welcoming, even though they might have had the roof torn off their house, they still welcome you into their house and they want to share their stories. And so to see people go through those challenges, but then pick themselves up and try to start the process of rebuilding their lives is really inspiring and often makes great stories. And those great stories are some of the ones that I love telling the most.
So Joel, do you have any questions for us?
I do. I would love to know what you find most challenging about presenting or working on AbiliTV.
Oof, that is a very good question, Joel. I'll have to admit it's mainly when we getting to see some of the guest hosts and even recording in front of the camera sometimes. Because it's honestly nerve-wracking at times, if I'm being a bit honest with myself.
It is nerve-wracking, and I still find it nerve-wracking when the lights go on and, the live TV begins. But as I said before, the more you do it, the less those nerves will impact you, and you just learn to challenge those nerves. They become less stressful, and they become more of a bit of an adrenaline rush, which helps you deliver your best work.
That's actually very accurate description of that. Props.
Yes, so don't be scared of the nerves. Just learn to utilize them to your advantage. That's a tip for you.
Very good advice, man.
And Jess, what do you find, what may be exciting about working on AbiliTV?
I don't know. I just started today. This is my first gig.
There you go.
So I did an interview last year, but it was, I was being like you with, thank you very much for that. So I found it today. I've got really sweaty hands. And of course, I'm not doing the exact, way of speaking.
Yes.
But I like it. At the same time, it's very thrilling and entertaining and exciting. Yes.
And you meet some sort of interesting people.
Yes,
sometimes.
like you, Joel. Thank you very much for coming.
Fran, what's been the best story that you've covered so far?
The story I think was Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. And why? Because you got to see the acrobats and be involved, or was there a certain angle of the story, a certain element of the story that you enjoyed telling the most?
Well, I enjoyed interviewing some of the acrobats. It was fascinating to hear what they had to say about what they do in their performance.
Can you remember where they were from? Because they're from all over the world, aren't they, Cirque du Soleil performers?
I think they were from somewhere like Mexico, somewhere like that.
And again, that's one of the great things about this job is meeting people from different cultures, often different language backgrounds. And the more people you meet from a more diverse range of places in the world, I think the better journalist it makes you, because it makes you a more well-rounded storyteller if you have had exposure to lots of different cultures and languages, for sure. What do you think you would like to do in the media, if you would like to continue in the media?
I'd like to go out and do actual reporting in public. Yeah, basically go out and interview people, like ask questions about their lives and what they do for a living.
If you're particularly passionate about something, learn as much as you can about it, because that always comes across when you're delivering stories, that if you know something, and you can share a good story, then it really helps to be able to do the best story that you can. And I think one thing I would tell you guys is more and more these days we're seeing people in my field as journalists from a really diverse spectrum of the population. So probably a bit before I started, it was only men that really got to do the job, and then we saw more women come in. Now we're seeing people from a diverse range of countries and backgrounds and religions, and more people from the whole spectrum of the population. I think it's great. So I think there's certainly work that can be done by everyone. And if you want to be on TV or the media or radio or write for the newspaper, then you just set your mind to it and don't let anyone tell you can't do it, because we think we need to hear from all sorts of people. And I think, again, it's like meeting people. The more broad range of people we have on TV, the better our TV will be, that's for sure.
Have you seen AbiliTV? And if so, do you have any advice for us?
I have seen AbiliTV, and I'm very impressed with the product that you guys are putting out there. So keep being inquisitive, keep being curious, and enjoy talking to people and enjoy sharing those stories. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole.
G'day, I'm Braden Jason. Thanks for watching AbiliTV, Australia's only television series hosted and crewed by people with disabilities. AbiliTV is dedicated to producing inspiring stories from across the disability community, shining a light on achievements, challenges, creativity, and inclusion. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the AbiliTV YouTube channel and keep watching for more stories where ability shines. And why not check out this video next?